Hello to all of our listeners out there in podcast land, and welcome to episode 24 of the Canadian Patriot podcast, recorded on April 18th, 2016. Joining me this evening, we have Gavin, a business owner, gun enthusiast, hunter, atheist, and host of the Greater Toronto Area chapter of the Tactical Beard Owners Club. Hey, Gavin, how's it going?
Pretty good. Yourself?
Oh, fuck.
Very well, thank you.
Sorry.
No, you're not.
We also have Tyler, the podcast etiquette queen of the International Liberty or Death podcast. Tyler's been shooting for 9 years, both as a casual and sports shooter and as a hunter. He identifies politically as a libertarian. Hey, Tyler, way to make a ruckus.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm usually the first one to be all over people for podcast etiquette, but then I don't mute my shit here. Sorry again. We had nothing to do but drink while we were waiting for Gavin.
Yeah, we drank a lot while we were waiting.
Hey, I'm sorry, guys. My grinder date ran late. It happens.
You know, if your grinder date lasts longer than 4 hours, you're supposed to see a physician, right?
Well, only if I took medication. What if he's just so dreamy?
Amazing. Gavin, read the copy.
You haven't introduced yourself yet.
Oh, shit. I should introduce myself. Okay.
Apparently Andrew's thinking about dreamy guys and got ahead of himself.
I was. It's fine. I'm your host, Andrew. I'm a libertarian competitive shooter and gear reviewer at everydaytactical.com.
Then we'd love to hear your feedback about the show. Positive, negative, but be warned, if it's negative, we will rip on you mercilessly. But we might do that anyways, even if it's positive. So leave some feedback. Visit CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback or email us at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. If you leave a 5-star review on the iTunes, there is a good chance that if you leave a little request in there, that I might drink whatever it is that you request. Nothing too weird or gross, but leave it in there. You never know what might happen. But yeah, the edited version of the show, which is not as good as the live version that you're watching now, is available at Stitcher and on iTunes. We still don't know what Stitcher is, but if you know what it is and that's where you listen to it, you can find us there.
Somebody told me that they want to make you drink Smirnoff Ice.
I'll do it. I mean, whatever. It's alcohol still.
Kinda.
We, actually, funny story about Smirnoff Ice and drinking. We were at my buddy's bachelor party, and his older brother does not, for whatever reason, drink beer. He only drinks coolers. But he grabbed a 2-4 of Smirnoff Ice, and that was the only thing in the fridge when everybody showed up because we hadn't done a beer run yet. So everyone was just like, fuck it, and just like grabbed one of his Smirnoff Ice and cracked it. He comes back and like half of his case is gone. He's like, what the fuck, guys? You always rip on me for it. We're like, well, it was the only thing here. Shut up.
Cold alcohol is better than no alcohol.
Exactly.
That's a fact.
I'd also like to say we're three likes away from 200 likes on Facebook, but that's a lie because we hit 200 likes today.
Nice.
Which I'm pretty excited about. So we're only severely behind Tyler's podcast still. So if you haven't liked us on Facebook, please go give us a like. We won't judge you.
But then go like Liberty or Death Podcast so I can stay ahead of Andrew forever.
Not everything is a competition, but everything for Tyler and I is a competition.
Everything we talk about on the show is a competition.
Pretty much. Speaking of, I have an update from episode 22. We talked about CQB in episode 22. And shout out to Tyler and the International Liberty or Death podcast, episode 59. They mentioned the CQB show that we did, and I want to make it clear that if you want to shoot CQB with the Ontario Rifle Association at CFB Borden, you do not, in fact, need to join another league, the Ontario Rifle Association. You can come and shoot as a guest at an increased fee. And the cost for guests is an extra $30 on top of the match fee of $20. So if you want to come out and try CQB, you don't need to join the ORA. Just pay your guest fee, come out and give it a shot. The guest fee is way cheaper than getting a membership. So now Tyler has no excuse to come and shoot CQB.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Saturdays are hard to come by. I had a free Saturday on the 9th, but now it looks like I'm going to be busy shooting with you. So That pretty much books me right until August.
Yeah, weekends are hard as a shooter. I get that.
Yeah, that's why I took today off work.
That must have been nice.
I mean, I got out yesterday, but I was like, you know what? I still got a lot of vacation time I haven't taken, so I'm gonna just take today off as well.
I've got all my vacation time saved up for next week. Turkey season opens on Monday.
Nice. Unfortunately, I've got a bunch of business trips coming up, so.
Well, have fun with that. I'll be
Yeah.
making the rivers and streams run red with the blood of wild poultry.
Well, one of the business trips is to New Orleans, so I can't really complain too much.
All right, let's talk about what we're drinking. We'll start with Gavin.
I'm drinking Piston Head again, just because that's what I had left over in my fridge, and I didn't really have time to go do anything else. But
cold beer is better than no beer.
Exactly.
What do you got, Tyler?
I'm drinking Bush. I don't think I've had Bush on this podcast before.
I don't think so.
Make your jokes.
I will put it in the show notes.
I think Bush is like a very underrated beer. It's one of my favorites.
It's actually not bad. I enjoy Bush from time to time.
Cold and frosty like God intended.
Well.
Yeah, if you make it cold enough, you can't taste it, right? That's the...
Oh no, I'll drink it warm. Doesn't matter.
Because we have hate mail on the show, I've got Lef again this week, but I've gone from the blondes to the brunettes. So there's Lef Brune this week.
Did you get that picture I sent you of that home outside Clarksburg?
Yes.
With the flag out front?
I thought that was amazing.
I figured your like alter ego set up shop there.
My alter ego can probably afford better beer than Lef, but...
That's actually Andrew's fallback location for if his primary residence is ever compromised.
It's like 2 blocks from the dump.
Well, it's a perfect place for scavenging for supplies.
Exactly. All right, let's go into the news. So we'll start with the hydro rates going up, coming to us from the CBC.
You mean the hydro rates going up because we didn't use enough?
Yeah, that's the hydro rates. I mean, so apparently we are so good in Ontario at conserving energy that we somehow need to pay more money for using less energy because apparently in socialist Ontario, the laws of supply and demand no longer apply.
No, they do. They're just inverse now. That's how that works.
Is that like a negative interest rate kind of a thing?
Yeah, it's the new theory. It's new math, if you will. That's how that works.
Like, what the shit? The off-peak rate is now going to be 8.7 cents a kilowatt hour. Like, why is it going up another 2 cents? What the shit?
Well, because if we stop using electricity, right, or not using as much, how are they going to get their carbon tax money?
I guess so. I don't understand this at all. We already have time-based usage. So if you're paying attention to that and you run like your energy-intensive domestic stuff, like your laundry machine and your dishwasher and your oven and stuff, during the off-peak to take advantage of the cheaper rate, because like the rate's like... The off-peak rate is like less than half of the on-peak rate, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, so if you're better at conserving energy and you're playing by their stupid rules for the time-based billing, and you have their stupid smart meter and you monitor the consumption, now it's going to still cost you more money, even though we have the same amount of hydro generating ability that we did last year.
Yeah. Although I'd have to look, because the last time I took a look at like at least my business's hydro, we weren't on time of use yet. We were still on whatever we were on before. They keep threatening that we're going to switch over. But
yeah, bear in mind that businesses are billed differently than residential.
Yeah. Which, if you ask me, those are the people that should have been on it first because they're the ones that are open during the day. Like, it seems so ridiculous. But
I don't understand how we're charging different rate. Like, it's not like the hydro plant doesn't operate at night and that somehow makes it less expensive or whatever.
well, man,
Like,
in theory, I think it's because businesses open during the day use, generally a lot more electricity than your average home. But
sure, but where's your
but
average
if they don't
person? They're
switch
not at home,
businesses
right?
over, it just seems ridiculous, right?
Yeah, I don't know. This whole thing is remarkably stupid.
Well, the problem here is supply management economics. It's the same type of problem that you saw with the wheat board and the dairy board and any other supply management government enterprise. They're trying to predict demand, and they're dictating how much of a given commodity needs to be produced. And when they're wrong, ends up bearing the consequences? Us, not them. You have to ask yourself, how sustainable is a system where the people making decisions suffer no consequences for being wrong? And that's why a free market supply and demand system is more efficient at delivering the product to the market, because there are consequences for being wrong and rewards for being right. So the incentive is to study the usage habits and develop electricity producing systems that have the ability to react to increased demand and the ability to drop supply when it's not needed.
Yeah, I mean, I
If
think the
only
whole thing
we
is.
had a way to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the whole thing is just ass backwards. Like, I mean,
Ontario and Quebec are probably the provinces best equipped to have a system set up that way because of our enormous capacity for hydroelectric generation. It's as simple as opening up a few more floodgates and firing up a few more turbines, or cutting them off. Like, it's really that simple to just react to demand, and it can be done almost instantaneously. It can be run on computers.
Yeah, that or they could probably get some batteries or something and store some of that stuff up somewhere to save it, so it's not just like generating electricity for no point. But given there's so much hydroelectric and wind power and everything, it's not like.
But it's not like we have extra energy that we're just throwing away. We're selling it to New York, and we're selling it to them for a pittance.
Well, sometimes we sell it to New York, sometimes we sell it to Manitoba and Quebec, and sometimes we give it away for free, and sometimes we pay them to take it.
Yeah, that's the part. It's not like we have a shortage of generation ability.
There's a shortage of customers, and why would that be? It's because of all the manufacturing that has fled the province in droves under the weight of the oppressive taxation and insane regulations.
I think we're going to make taxation our drinking word.
But taxation is theft.
Yeah, and taxation is theft.
So for our listeners, if you want to play along at home, our drinking word this evening is tax, or any variation thereof. Taxation. Taxation is theft. And that's 3 for everybody that's counting.
There you go.
All right. But if we say taxation is theft, you actually have to chug what's left in your drink, though, right?
No, I don't.
That's how that works.
That is not a safe idea at all.
Come on, I have to work tomorrow.
Well, we don't. The listeners do.
Yeah, like the whole thing, it just really pisses me off because the answers are so obvious. You're producing too much of a product. There's no demand for it. How is that sustainable? And it's only in government where a mechanism exists to just bill people for every time you screw up. I just don't get it, and I understand it, but I just don't get how people continue to tolerate it.
Well, yeah, but the reason it's sustainable is because they're going to just keep increasing the price so that they keep making their bottom end.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the next one. We've got this one from the Star. And as the Liberal government, you have to have screwed up when even the Star writes a hate piece on you.
The Red Star.
Yeah, even the Star is not impressed with Mr. Trudeau on this one. So, you gotta know something went wrong. So, coming to us from the Star, we got Trudeau campaign pledge to make jobless youth didn't make budget cut. So, I can't say I'm terribly surprised by this because the Liberals were all about the youth vote this last election. So, now they got in, screw them, right? That's how that works.
I'm pretty sure that was their answer for a lot of their promises.
Oh, we're not talking about marijuana again, are we?
Or a bunch of other things. I mean... let's just not do this. We won the election. Who cares what they do now?
Was there any speculation as to what Trudeau and his gang might actually do to encourage people to hire young people?
I've got some things I could speculate on, but I don't think there's anything in the article about that.
They're going to actually offer them marijuana for young people.
Like, I think this is worth exploring because when the government screws with the labor markets, okay, maybe they create an incentive to hire a young person, but at the same time, they're creating a disincentive to hire anybody else. So the country as a whole, the labor market as a whole, isn't really doing any better when they start playing these games. They're just shuffling things around.
Well, they are shuffling things around because, I mean, they do have some money allocated to this, but if you're going to hire youth, you have to remember that as a business owner, what business is going to hire youth? They're low skill, they don't have a lot of life experience. It's not their fault that they're like 16, 18, 20 years old. It's not their fault they don't have 20 years experience in a field.
For sure.
But they can only work entry-level jobs because they don't have that experience.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's that catch-22, right? Like,
well, it's not.
You need experience to get the job, but you're not going to have experience if you don't get the job.
It is kind of a catch-22, but there are jobs that are historically have been aimed towards youth. They're basically all service jobs, right? You work fast food, you work in a regular like table service restaurant, or you work retail.
Yeah, that's $15 an hour, right?
Yeah, I will hashtag fight for 15. I almost said something I'd have to edit. There will be bad things that happen. Actually, once we're done this news article, I have a whole fucking tangent about that.
Excellent.
I was listening to an interview with Walter Block earlier this morning, and he was talking about the minimum wage, and he had an interesting take on it. In that, it's really like employment. It's an employment scheme where it's basically mandating who must be unemployed. So we talk about youth in the labor market and how they are unskilled, how they lack experience, and it takes a long time to get people to work up to a level of training before they're able to contribute in a profitable manner to a business. The government is coming in and saying, no, you cannot hire this person because you can't pay them this little. So it's creating a situation where young people don't have an opportunity to take on entry-level jobs, and companies, the only way they can bring these young people on to give them training is through an unpaid internship.
Which
right?
Isn't that
because
illegal?
the company can't say, well, hey, I'd love to be able to pay you, $10 an hour while you kind of get, while you're shown the ropes and for the first 6 months, and then you can kind of contribute productively to the business. But the government won't let me, so I can't. I gotta take this job and get like a programmer in India to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So tangent time. I had to go to City Hall in Kitchener and do paperwork there, and they were having a protest on Friday on the 15th. Apparently, it's their second annual Friday the 15th of April protest to hashtag fight for 15 because they want a living wage and the minimum wage right now is not enough to support them. And some woman came up to my spouse and I. We were walking into the City Hall, and she wanted to hand us a pamphlet, and I, said no, and my spouse had a slightly longer conversation with this woman, because I just walk past people in public because I'm not a good person and I don't care. And this woman walked away from us saying that...
we all knew that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just pointing it out for the listeners that maybe hadn't figured it out on their own. This woman walks back to her gaggle of like-minded protesters and says they're not interested in equality. And it's like, I just want to like turn around and start smacking the stupid out of people at that point, because it's like, you understand that the whole, like, so this is like a middle-aged woman that was doing the protest, and there was no young people at this protest. It was like 15 or 20 like middle-aged, mostly white people. There was a few visible minorities, but it was mostly like middle-aged white people there having this protest. And like, if you're in your 40s and you work a minimum wage job, maybe you haven't made the best life decisions.
Yeah.
Or more likely, these people are not actually working minimum wage jobs. They're there for their little bit of activism to say that they're making a difference because they're, social democrats, hashtag feel the burn and all that good shit. And it's like, do these people not understand? Like, if you raise the minimum wage, as an employer, I have to sell my shit at a higher dollar value in order to continue to pay you, or I have to get less of you to do the same amount of work so that my business continues to remain profitable. If that's the case, this goes back to this youth unemployment thing. If I hire unskilled labor, if I hire high school students to whatever, flip burgers or punch in their order at McDonald's, whatever, if I can get a computer to do that instead of a person, I'm going to get the computer to do it. The problem with this is I now eliminate the job through automation. So these young people don't have the opportunity to get the skills, which is going to further reduce the labor market and further increase inflation because it's going to drive up more costs. And I don't understand how these, like the social justice warriors don't understand this concept.
Well, yeah.
Because it's pretty basic fucking economics.
Well, not even that, but like if you look at, because this is generally fast food places that have this problem, right? They're the ones that are really up in arms. But yeah, you look at it, and like at least the guy flipping burgers in the back has at least some sort of a skill, right?
He can flip burgers, yep.
Yeah, most of that stuff is mostly cooked, but you still got to flip a burger. But the guy working the cash, or girl, all they do is push buttons.
Right? They could be like.
The most they do is push buttons on a screen. So you want to get paid $15 an hour to push buttons on a screen. Okay, I could do that myself when I place my order.
Well, and we're seeing that, and part of this, I look at this because, like, in my day job in real life, I play a computer programmer that does industrial automation, and we work in an industry where we want to eliminate people. I want as few people to touch the stuff as possible because it's easier for us to build and service machines to do this than it is to employ people to do the same work. Right? So this is why we see automated checkouts at the grocery store or at your local big box store. This is why we're seeing fast food franchises go to order it yourself screens. This is why we're seeing self-bag check-ins and self-ticketing systems at airports, like the kiosks where you get your boarding pass and everything. Like the whole...
Well, that, like, let's be honest, right?
Job, right?
How many times have you been to a fast food place and they've screwed up your order?
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, if I can replace you with a machine that can do your job better, faster, more efficiently, and with fewer issues than a human, as a business owner, why would you not have that machine?
Yeah, you get no sick days, no vacation days. There's some downtime, but if you bring in an extra machine to put that in place when that one's getting fixed, there really isn't any downtime.
It's more than that, too, because you also, when you have automation, you don't have to worry about the government inserting itself into the labor negotiation process.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's what the minimum wage is. It's them coming in and saying and doing the negotiating for the employee, saying, no, they're getting paid this much, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, and this is the thing that also pisses me off about this minimum wage nonsense. Like, you look at, like, people that are in fast food joints and all these places, they want their $15 an hour to flip burgers, punch buttons on a screen and all that. Fine. What about a guy that's making $15 an hour right now, like a paramedic? He's had to go to school and spend time, effort, and money learning an actual skill that contributes to society.
You got two outcomes.
What does he deserve to get paid now? $15 an hour still? No,
they'll strike and ask for more money, relative to what the new minimum wage is. Or number two, they'll quit their job and pursue something that's easier but equally lucrative.
Yeah. But that's the problem, right? Like, so you're going to have to increase everybody's wages, not just
so at the end of the day, nobody's
job wages. Yeah.
Yeah, everything just costs more. Like at the end of the day, the employer does not pay the minimum wage; the customer does. At the end of the day.
Yeah, and I mean, and servers, I would say, have the biggest beef with this because their minimum wage is something ridiculous, like $5 an hour or something.
Yeah,
still.
If they work in an alcohol serving establishment, it's significantly
Which, don't get me wrong, I think that is absolute bullshit. But I also think that tipping is bullshit.
Yeah,
I think that restaurants should pay those people the same wage as if you were paying anybody else. I'm still going to end up paying the same amount because restaurants are going to, increase their cost of everything by 15%, and it goes to. But then I'm not paying this fee for the sake of paying this fee because they're underpaid. You know, I'm
I'll tell you
paying
what I
it
like
because
about
that's
the
the
concept
value
of
of a
tipping.
fucking burger or whatever, right?
I'll tell you what I like about the concept of tipping. It cuts out the middleman between the customer and the person directly providing the service. And so
Well, for sure.
it creates a more direct chain of accountability, which incentivizes the server to do, a good job.
But that's the problem,
Yeah,
though.
but then you
They
have
feel
people like
entitled
Gavin
to it.
that, well, yeah, so they have the servers that feel entitled, but then you have people like Gavin that don't want to tip people.
It's not that I don't. Like, I'm all about paying my fair share, right? Like, if that's the actual cost of what a burger is, then fine. I don't mind paying that. But then it's like I'm going around the business to pay the person what they're actually owed when the employer should be the one that's responsible for paying its employees an appropriate wage.
Question for you. Who's in a better position to determine how good a server is? You being
Well,
served or the
Well,
boss?
obviously the
elsewhere?
customer, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things though. Like, and if you go somewhere regularly, you start paying that tip whether the person's done a good job or not, because you don't want people spitting in your food the next time you go,
That's fair. Yeah, that's
right?
that's
So you're sort of you're paying
There's pros and
insurance, right?
cons both ways. There are.
Yeah.
I don't know. The government meddling in it is its whole own problem, and then the direct labor market with service jobs is a whole other issue.
Yeah.
But you don't see those people up in arms bitching about it. It's the guys that are working shitty other jobs that are not getting tips.
It's not even the guys that are working the shitty other jobs, like the guys that work at McDonald's that are protesting. Because I would love to have had the free time on Friday, but unfortunately, I'm an adult with a big boy job, and I have obligations to pay taxes and show up to work and stuff. So I don't have time to go and ask the protesters why they're protesting and inquire as to why they feel that I'm against their equality. Because I want to know how many of them are university professors, or how many of them are on EI, how many of them actually flip burgers for a living.
Yeah.
Or just remind them that equality means equal opportunity, not equal result.
Well, they would disagree with you. That's not their idea of equality. If there is anything but equal results, they will fabricate new reasons for whatever injustice, some sort of fake oppression, or blame whatever identifiable group that they can, whatever boogeyman is popular in that time. It doesn't matter. These people are professional complainers, and a lot of people make the mistake of trying to reason with irrational people. These people are not speaking the same language as us. You have
so
to
you're
get
saying
that.
my original approach of trying to smack the stupid out of them was not that bad?
I think that's really ultimately the only answer, because when you look, I'm not advocating violence here. I'm not encouraging any illegal acts. Disclaimer.
This time.
But at the end of the day, those people are lobbying the government to go into private establishments and alter employment contracts. At the end of the day, that's with the force of a barrel of a gun behind it. Everything that the government does is backed with the authority of guns. I mean, you have to accept that. So these people are lobbying for violent coercion to be deployed against you as a business owner, or you as a potential business owner, or any other circumstance that you can think of. These people are lobbying for violence to be deployed against you. So when you look at it that way, then any violence that you would want to deploy against them is retaliatory. You're defending your interests. And that's kind of the way I see it. Not that I'm advocating violence, but I'm just saying that these people are irrational, they're unreasonable, they don't understand economics, but their vote counts for as much, it counts the same as yours, and they're using a wholly violent and unethical system to deprive you of your rightful property.
Well, yeah, but as we all know, violence is the gold standard.
Yeah, well,
more problems have been solved with violence than with anything else.
Yeah, that's right.
Violence is not the answer until it's the only answer.
That's right.
All right, let's move on to something else, because that was a whole rabbit hole. Coming to us from the National Post, we have something that I'm sure will upset the anyone but Harper crowd. Liberals expected to face backlash after budget backs off lifelong pension for disabled veterans. So I don't know if you fellas remember this. During the election, there was a group of Canadian Forces veterans that were part of the left's Anyone But Harper campaign, because remember, Stephen Harper is the devil.
Well, yeah. I mean...
So there was a bunch of these veterans that were all like, the Liberals will save us and they will ensure that we get our, our due. And now the Liberal government is backed out of their lifelong pensions that were promised to disabled vets. So way to go, Liberals. Sticking it to the veterans once again.
I mean,
yeah,
I'll give them that.
I would not piss off a bunch of old people that know how to work guns well.
We talked about this before, though. Remember, veterans, the average age of veterans is no longer old people. The average age of veterans is now middle-aged people, because we just had that whole war in Afghanistan thing. So yeah, okay, they might be veterans or they might be disabled veterans, but they're not that old and they're not that fat and fragile, so they're still gonna tear stuff up if they need to.
Yeah, that just makes them more dangerous. Yeah.
Right? Like that's.
Okay, two things. Number one, I don't think there's any real credible threat of Canadian veterans, young or old, rising up against the government for mistreating them.
No,
the
you're right.
government's been mistreating them for decades, and they haven't done anything. It just kind of seems like it's not in the Canadian culture to do that kind of thing, to go off the deep end and resort to violence, and that might change. Who knows? But
far too civilized.
I'm not seeing any evidence of that, and you're only going to see that when people believe that the consequences of doing nothing are worse than the consequences of acting. Right? So like the state would have to be this murderous, oppressive regime for people to do that. And usually when that happens, it's already too late.
I was just going to say, that's the problem with that, is once they start killing people, they've already started killing people.
Now, the other thing I wanted to add there was that I really don't think any of the major parties have a serious policy on taking care of the military. None of them do.
They don't.
I mean, under any of the parties, we would be lucky to see fresh coats of paint on the F-150s that I see driving down Highway 26 between Beeford and Thornbury and Collingwood all day long. Like, these people drive around in spray-painted pickup trucks.
Yeah. I mean, it would be pretty easy for them to go get one of those, like, commercial vinyl cling wrap things and CAD-PAT put on that thing. Those aren't that expensive. But yeah, that rattle can, flat, olive drab.
Yeah, that flat Kelly green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think any of the parties take the military seriously. Canada's nowhere near the NATO recommended target of 2% of GDP. It's quite frankly a joke. The idea that the meager contributions that the government is willing to throw to the military, that the military is expected to defend this country, or we've seen that with the lack of funding allocated to the military, the military has a questionable ability to maintain a few thousand strong commitment abroad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
this is just one
pretty
more.
bad. It's pretty bad.
And this part kind of irks me because one of the few legitimate roles of government is national defense.
Agreed.
Right? Like, that's one of the things that the government federally should exist and be responsible to provide.
I would say that's probably like their primary goal. Like,
yeah, I mean, like that is really, because I have a hard time coming up with like legitimate uses for government, but national defense is one of those. And
border integrity and defense.
Yeah. And peacefully resolving disputes between individuals.
Well, I mean, just because you threw the word federal in there 30 seconds ago, that's why I excluded that. I think that would be resolved at a more local level. But
I agree, but there does still need to be a national oversight, so it's applied equally.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it needs to be big, but I mean, the Supreme Court should still be the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
Let's have those people elected, though.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Or maybe not, because electing our representatives hasn't really worked out very well.
Well, that's because people vote strategically.
Maybe that's not the best idea.
I am not opposed to having elected representatives because we are sort of like a democracy, kind of.
Well,
But
I mean, here's the thing. People criticize mob rule all day long, but then they don't connect the dots and realize that that's democracy. You know, like those people protesting at City Hall, Fight for 15 people, that say that, you should be deprived of wealth, to make up for their poor decisions. You have to share a system of government with those people.
well, the problem that I have with that is I only need 51% of the population to agree with those people to deprive the other 49% from all of their wealth.
Exactly.
Clearly, we just need to go to Thunderdome, and everything will be settled by Thunderdome.
Honestly, I have been saying this for years, and this is the reason why I cannot be in politics. Trial by combat, settling a dispute with another person by some means of martial combat, that needs to be a thing. The fact that you can no longer duel in this country because it's a chargeable offense, like it's a criminal
up to 2 years in prison.
That's right. Like,
only 2 years?
2 years for challenging somebody to a duel, and 2 years for accepting a challenge to a duel.
that law
I almost feel
needs
like
to be
goading
stricken.
somebody into challenging me just so they can go to jail.
No, that law needs to be stricken. It should be within my legal rights as a Canadian to challenge another man or woman or other or cisgendered, non-whatever, bisexual, etc. 7 genders things.
Don't imprison these people with your terms of male
with my
and female.
gender stereotypes.
Yeah.
If I, as a Canadian, if my honor is impugned by another Canadian, I feel that trial by combat or the ancient right of a duel should be within my purview of things that I can use to settle that dispute.
I mean, fine, put it that you can't murder the person or whatever, but like,
it's not murder.
Just
It's an agreement, like.
Well,
Yeah,
but
it's
just make it like
It's
straight up
consent.
fisticuffs or something. Like, you don't need to do like pistols at dawn or
No,
swords.
I don't
fights,
care.
but,
Like, I will challenge them
just
to a duel,
make
and
it a
they can
boxing
fix the
match. Well, that's
No,
typically if you do challenge somebody to a duel, that is how that works.
That's
You
what I was saying.
challenge-
If
pick
they
the
want to
weapon.
make it a boxing match, I will beat them to death. If
it
they
can
want
be
to make
like
it
a best of 7 game of tetherball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't care what weapons they choose is fine, and it doesn't have to be to the death. First blood is fine.
But it
Yeah.
should be.
Well, it should be, because then they will never impugn my honor ever again.
Here's how I would do it. You'd have like a codified system to challenge people to duels, and we'd put it on pay-per-view.
Yeah.
To pay for the mess, to clean up the mess afterwards.
So it's less like Thunderdome and more like Death Race.
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
But
But
I
it's
mean,
all
if they had
consensual.
TVs there, they would be watching that on pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm.
But Master Blaster just didn't have enough methane, as they would
tell
call
you,
it
man.
down there.
If I had
Runs
things my
gas
way,
down?
I'd bring back the death penalty. We'd bring back hangings, and I'd have cities compete on who would host, the hangings, like the Olympics. They would bid.
I'm agreeable to that. I don't think that capital punishment acts as a very good deterrent,
No,
but
I don't.
I think it acts as a deterrent. It's not a great deterrent, but it's better than no deterrent.
Well, the fact of the matter is, when people commit crimes, they do so in such a way that they believe they're not going to get caught. So the punishment is a really poor deterrent.
No,
Ultimately,
but when
the
you
best
remove
deterrent.
the ultimate deterrent from the list of things, it just makes it that much more like it's like, so even if I do get caught, what's the worst that's going to happen?
Sure. I mean, that might be a factor there. Ultimately, the best deterrent is to create the conditions where committing the crime itself is dangerous and impossible, and you get that by allowing people to freely defend themselves with the best tools available.
Are you talking about allowing me to carry a gun for my own defense or the defense of my loved
I'm
ones?
talking about carrying
Or anything in this
adequate
country?
and appropriate tool for self-defense. There's that,
Like this ice pick.
like that ice pick.
That
Did you use
doesn't
that
look
on your
like an
grinder
ice pick,
date?
is that?
It's an ice pick. I wouldn't want that anywhere inside of me. I mean,
That's what she said?
The other thing too, I look at it from a cost perspective. If we're going to maintain like an incarceration system, and we got somebody like Justin Bork, for example, he's be in prison for like 75 years. Basically the rest of his natural life. From a cost perspective, maybe it'd just be better to lose the guy.
Yeah.
Well, so that's the other problem with this, right? Like, incarceration, like lifetime incarceration, is also not a good deterrent.
No.
3 hots and a cot the rest of your life you're taken care of, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Socialist paradise.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're in like a min security, like, dude, that's club.
Well, I don't
Fed
think
is
Justin
like,
Bork will
like-
make a... I don't think he'll make men's security, but I mean, I get your point.
But yeah, like, I mean, I wouldn't want to be like Bernardo was it was like in solitary for the rest of his life. Although he did have a TV and all kinds of other stuff, but like
Oh, yeah.
that would to me there was like not being able to see and talk to other people would be agony. But like if you're just like, I guess he's bad because he stole a shit ton of money, but he's not violent. Yeah, let's just put him in lockup for the rest of his life. But you know, he's in Gen Pop with everybody else.
Well, that's the
That'd be
other
alright.
the other issue with incarceration, particularly that Gen Pop thing you just brought up, is like prisons, detention centers, what have you, are very good at making criminals better criminals because you're putting them with other people that are good at that trade, right?
Yeah,
Who share how they were caught, so
Right.
they all learn from their mistakes.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Like, so when they do get out of the incarceration system, because it's not a rehabilitation system like it's being pushed by the leftists.
no.
When they get out
it's
of
not.
that incarceration system, they tend, not always, I'm generalizing, but they tend to be better criminals.
That's why I chose that word. That's why I don't care for you censoring me on the iTunes version. I choose my words very deliberately.
I mostly only censor the words that iTunes will ban us for.
The recidivism rate is kind of a BS statistic because it doesn't account for the criminals that are committing crimes again and just not getting caught.
Yeah.
Well, that's only because
They
they're
just got
better
better.
criminals. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's the... Yeah. Anyway, that's a rabbit hole again. I guess we'll go to the last news article for today before we go into the main topic. Coming to us from the CBC, liberal budget still doesn't add up, even with a few grains of salt. So again, when the CBC says the liberal government made a mistake,
Yeah, I would
I
say
ha-
that's even worse than the Star. Like,
yeah, I have to imagine that that's not like...
I wonder if the mistake was the amount of money that the Liberals didn't give to the CBC, if that's where they found the error.
The author of the article, Neil MacDonald, actually calls out Bill Monroe or Marneau. I don't know. He's French. Bill. We talked about him before. Bill's the new finance minister under the Liberal government.
Yep.
So they directly call out his plan, calling it murky because it doesn't make any bloody sense. And even people at the CBC, enough people at the CBC think this that it went to print.
Yeah.
You know, but the skeptic in me, the cynic in me says that the CBC throwing up the odd anti-liberal article is really just like a facade to make it appear that they're an unbiased news outlet and not like liberal shills, not the propaganda wing of the Liberal Party. Because what does this critique of the budget matter when these people have a majority? What does it matter? Is it going to change anything? No.
No.
Is it
And
going to
that's
change
true.
the budget? No.
No, but they could have picked a smaller issue, if you will, to do that. But I don't necessarily disagree with you.
How many people in this country do you think actually look at the broken down version of the budget?
Probably
I bet the
about
number...
6.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet the number can be measured in, like, triple and quadruple digits. Like, it's not a million Canadians.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
parts per million.
we know that it's like a fraction of a percent of the people who actually understand the budgetary figures themselves, and it's a fraction of them that actually look at the budget broken down.
Yeah.
Like it's a very minor number of people that actually care about this type of thing.
Yeah,
And that's why I think these
all
people,
3 of them are on this podcast tonight.
that's why I think the CBC is just paying lip service. It's just doing its thing to try and give the illusion of like, you know, not being partisan.
Yeah, I can see that. That's probably a good way to look at this. I mean, they do raise some good points, and most of them we've talked about in the show before when we were, I'll say, critiquing the Liberal budget in the previous episode. I don't remember what that was. Episode 20, maybe?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, sure. 20. Give 20 a listen, and 21, and 19, just to be safe.
Yeah, basically everything after 10. Just start at about 10. All right, let's slide into the main topic of the show. What are our ideas to fix the budget? And actually, before we go into our ideas to fix the budget, did you guys have a chance to listen? I put a link into a CBC radio show about like there was a call-in program, and one of the callers had this whole thing about how they could better the federal government could better use the money that was allocated to the military for something else.
No, unfortunately, I didn't have time to listen to that.
Yeah, all that time on Grindr, that'll eat up your schedule.
It does. I mean, I can't not reply to these guys. I mean, they're pouring their hearts out to me. They're so polite. I at least have to respond and say thank you, but I'm not interested. That's just a polite thing to do.
It's very Canadian of you.
The 90 minutes prior to recording this podcast, I spent cursing and swearing at my girlfriend's M&P while I installed a trigger kit upgrade. But that's kind of always going to be the issue here when you have taxation. Is every tax dollar collected and spent, there's always opportunity cost there. And so somebody's budgetary priority isn't the military, obviously. And somebody else's budgetary priority is the military. Somebody else's budgetary priority is highways, national infrastructure, police services, improving the prison system. Maybe they want the money to go to Indian reserves. Maybe they want the money to go to Arctic sovereignty expeditions. You know, maybe they want it to be donated to cancer research. Like everybody has their own priorities, and I think when you consider that, you have to understand that there are huge flaws in the system that we currently have in this country, because this money is just collected basically in a blanket fashion, and you have no say. You have virtually no control over how it's spent.
Well, and that's something that I would be willing to see change, because again, we're supposed to live in like a democracy where everybody gets a vote. So I mean, if you wanted to let me allocate don't change anything else about the tax system. I pay the same amount of money the same way, but let me allocate the money that I'm giving the federal government so that they don't have. There is no federal budget. The citizenry, as we deposit our taxes, describes this is how you will spend my money.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty direct democracy. And I mean, I realize that is probably asking too much from the average, I was going to say taxpayer, but that's probably not true. The average Canadian?
I've advocated for a system like this before where, yeah, you have like a weighted tax return where you can like allocate your preference for where you want your money to be spent.
Yeah, but I think, the problem with that is you'd have too many people that would be like, I want my tax dollars allocated to the free money that the Ontario government is going to give back to us.
Well, no, but that's what I mean.
Like, back, and it's like, no. Well, that's kind of a bullshit fucking
That's what I'm saying.
Dude.
You don't get to change the existing system. I'm just saying within the existing system, you get to, as the taxpayer, you get to describe how your contribution gets spent. So if I wanted to say 50% of my taxes goes towards the military, and 20% goes towards education, and 20% goes towards healthcare, and then you do whatever you want with the remainder because I forgot to do math, 10% or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Whatever.
Or if you
I don't take an hour of math a day, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's a future topic. We'll get to that. If you want to be a taxpayer and you want to say like 100% of my money goes towards social welfare programs for people that aren't eligible for EI, that's your choice. But if only $1,000 gets allocated to that, that's all the government gets to spend.
Yeah. I mean, I would really like just the government to do a budget like a company's supposed to do a budget, like, and run like a company's supposed to run, like where you don't have a $30 billion deficit. Like,
in order for that to happen, then the customers, and customers being us, the taxpayers, and that's like a total BS analogy. It's like describing a rape victim as a girlfriend. We need somewhere else to go if we don't like the services we're getting from the government, our government. Like you need competition. I face a lot of issues with the municipal government where I work. I'm a general contractor, build homes, condos, etc. Always hitting roadblocks, always fresh BS paperwork, needless environmental studies on the same piece of land. Same building plans, all kinds of stuff that just ends up costing money, and who ends up paying for it? The home buyer, not me. I just pass it down the road to the end customer. And so I deal with this, and I tell people, if I could say, you know what, I don't want to pay my property taxes to the town of Blue Mountains where I live. I'm going to pay them to the town of Collingwood instead, because I like the way they run their building department. If I was able to do that, things would change really quickly in this town. If everybody else said, you know what, I like the way they run things. They're more efficient. They're quicker. You know, they don't have all these needless BS rules. We're going to go over here now. If there was competition, you would see things change, and that's why we don't have, you know, what you're asking for, Gavin. Because there's no incentive. There's no incentive to behave any other way.
Yeah, it would just be nice if, I mean, not even if they did it like completely like a business, but at least mostly so that like the budget actually made sense, and like they weren't just like, let's just throw money at this. You know, like, oh, we don't have this money. Yeah, let's just throw it at this anyways because this needs to happen. It's like, that's not how this works, guys.
This is the system we have. It's a democracy. And if at least 50% of the voters, not people eligible to vote, but 50% of the people who vote, and when we have a parliamentary democracy, it doesn't even have to be 50%. It just needs to be a plurality, are okay with borrowing money that their grandchildren are going to be on the hook for, then that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I know. It's so frustrating though, because it's just like, are you kidding me? Like,
if we're going to go down one more rabbit hole tonight, it should be exploring the ethics of being able to borrow money in people's names who haven't even been born yet.
Yeah.
How is that okay?
No, I don't think that's okay, but I don't think it's okay that we run it as deficit either.
Yeah.
I don't understand how any politician, any political party feels that they can run any level of government at a deficit. Because if you were in private industry, if you were a manager of a department, you would be fired. If you owned a company, your company would go out of business. I don't understand how we let the politicians get away with it.
Well, you negotiate a loan with a bank where there's interest and penalties and all of that, and you could do that. But if you do that for too long,
exactly, that's the thing. You would still eventually lose your company. You would go out of business. You would not be able to maintain your position in management. Like the system in private industry is set up in such a way that it defeats people from being able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Let's just say Apple. Let's just take a company, Apple, big company, everybody knows what they do. If they produce a crappy product that nobody wants, for example.
We should use BlackBerry as an example instead.
BlackBerry.
Well,
if Research in Motion produced a crappy product that nobody wants, and they set up an inefficient factory with overpriced labor that nobody was willing to pay for the product that they produced, if they made all sorts of nonsensical decisions, and basically at the end of the day they produced a phone that was double the price of what their competitors were producing for a similar, if not inferior product, they would go out of business. They would just be done. They can't compete. But what they can do in this analogy is whip guns out, point them in people's faces, and say, you're buying this, whether you like it or not. Whether you use it or not, you're buying it. And that's what government does.
Yeah.
They produce products that people don't necessarily want, that are inferior to what private competitors might be able to produce. And whether you have any interest, whether you have any use for it or not, you're stuck paying for it. And you're stuck paying for it because there's, after a number of steps in between, a tax bill showing up in your mailbox, there is a gun behind that tax bill.
Absolutely. The entire thing is the threat of force, right? If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. If you don't go to jail, the police show up and take you to jail. And if you don't go, they'll shoot you.
Yeah.
Like...
So like you made a joke about punching these people in the face, these Fight for 15 people.
I never said punching them in the face. I said slap the stupid out of them.
Slap the stupid out of them, which is it is best accomplished with a fist to the face.
It is. That's true.
It's a closed slap.
In my opinion.
I just want to beat the stupid out of them. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was going to go with that.
I think we're all just imagining slapping the stupid out of some of these people.
I don't know what else to do with them.
Just how, like, if you were to say that that's how you were going to resolve your problem, people would say, well, that's violent, that's barbaric. You know, how could you be in favor of resolving your disputes that way? Meanwhile, these people endorse, you know, deploying state violence against you, where they lock you up in a cage like an animal if you don't, you know, bow to their will. Like, how is that not primitive and depraved and barbaric?
Well, and that's what I mean. Like, I all I'm doing is removing the state actors from my use of violence, because I mean,
creating efficiencies everywhere you go, cutting out the middleman.
Because you have to pay someone to slap the stupid out of them when you could just do it yourself for free.
No, not even that. Again, I do automation for a living. I could make a machine that would slap the stupid out of people for me, so I could make many machines and slap many stupid people at the same time.
I like where your head's at.
It deploys slaps in 115 grain increments at 1,100 feet per second.
Yeah, well, maybe. But I mean, really, at the end of the day, like, violence, like, the use of force has solved the majority of disputes in history, right? So all I'm proposing is that rather than me going to the state and crying and having a protest and demanding that someone do something, which is just newspeak for the government needs to use the police or military to enforce my will using violence on other citizenry, all I'm saying is I should be able to do that myself.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that you have an absolute right to defend your life, liberty, and property using whatever means you feel is necessary, and like any law that conflicts with that is not legitimate, in my opinion.
That is a reasonable criticism. Okay, back onto the topic, because I'm going to.
Well, I just want to say one thing along those lines. Everyone should read the article by Jack Donovan, which is "Violence is Golden," which kind of covers all this stuff we're talking about and how violence being, you know, not the answer until it's the only answer, and is used to back up basically everything that our society stands for. You should read that. It's fucking brilliant. And it'll explain all of that for those of you that are listening that don't get what we're talking about. Awesome.
Well, maybe not everyone, because I'm sure there are certain employees of certain federal agencies that listen to this podcast that maybe still could use a crayon drawing.
I have another piece of recommended reading, as long as we're throwing things out.
Yes.
It just kind of touches on the tyranny of the majority thing that we were touching on. It's a book called Democracy, the God That Failed by Hans Hermann Hoppe. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it, you know, wherever.
I'll throw a link in both of those to the show notes. If anybody wants a direct link, check our show notes under the topic section. Onward with the topic? Onward with the topic.
Let's move on.
How do you guys feel about the Libertarian Party's proposed flat tax system?
I like it.
It's certainly better than the alternatives.
It is. I don't hate the flat tax, because I mean, like, it would make sense that because of equality, #social justice, everyone pays the same amount, right? Like,
well, yeah, like, how?
And
is
I don't mean like the same amount.
How is that unfair? Like,
well, that's exactly it. That's my point. Like, I like this because it addresses a lot of the stuff that left pushes. Is that whole #activism, equality, social justice BS stuff that makes me want to slap the stupid out of people?
Yeah. I mean, like, if people are just lazy and greedy and just happen to have a whole lot of money, fine. I don't particularly like that so much. However, if you work hard for your money, which most of us do, why do I have to pay more than somebody else?
I will do you one better, Gavin. If I work, no matter how hard for my money, what entitles another citizen of the country to the fruits of my labor? Whether that's being born into a family where someone else has done that labor, or whether I've done it for myself. What entitles another person to my property?
Well, yeah, nothing. It doesn't.
Exactly. That's
I mean, like, I'm talking about, like, you know, like, to reason with those liberals.
We've established that we can't reason with these people. They are,
I still have
by
to try sometimes.
unreason.
I still have to try sometimes. I have hope for humanity. Not a whole lot of it because I'm armed, but like a little bit.
Before we get into this, let's criticize the existing model, the progressive tax system. That's a system where the harder you work, you get diminishing rewards. You receive less and less of the share of the value created by your harder work as you go up.
The problem with that is that it becomes a disincentive for hard work.
Exactly. So in that sense, it's like, if somebody asks you, how are you doing? It's like, how do you answer that question? It's like, compared to what? So that's the way you got to look at these tax plans. It's like, if we're stuck with tax plans, if we're stuck with, federal income tax, well, then Libertarian Party of Canada has a very attractive tax plan. Certainly better than the alternatives.
Well, yeah, and you look at like those,
step in the right direction.
And there's certainly people that are in like one tax bracket. They get a raise at work for working hard. They bump up into that next bracket, and now all of a sudden they're getting paid more on paper, but they're getting paid less at the end of the day because they're in that next bracket now. And that's
because they're no longer eligible for their child benefit or anything like this because they show this much money on their paycheck.
Yeah.
And that, you see that all the time in the United States, primarily, where you can make more money living off the state than you can by working in certain circumstances.
100%. Particularly when there are incentives like the child care benefit things or the free housing or the other free social programs that if you had to work for them would cost you tens of thousands of dollars. But by not working, you get for free. So what's the incentive to do work?
Exactly.
There isn't one, right?
Exactly. I can't wait to touch on the guaranteed universal income sometime in the future.
Yeah.
We should do a whole show on that because it is in my list of topics. But
that is the biggest horseshit thing ever. Like, you're gonna tax me.
So you're saying that guaranteed universal income is not the way to fix the budget? Is that?
Yeah, I would say that that's more or less my position.
I mean, if they can make some sort of perpetual money machine,
they have that.
Breaks out money, but
doesn't down on
inflation.
Yeah, that doesn't cause inflation.
Oh. Yeah, that Bank of Canada causes a lot of inflation.
I'd be all for it. If somehow they could just keep giving me $900 a month, regardless of my employment status, I would be okay with that. So long as, it doesn't come from my pocket to begin with, and it doesn't cause inflation.
Here you go. Let me pose a question to you guys. If you have the absolute right to anything, to own anything, it would be the fruits of your labor. So what term would you use to describe a system where somebody else is entitled or lays claim to the fruits of your labor?
Yeah, that's
straight up theft. That's all it is. It's straight up theft.
Theft, or communism. I would also accept slavery.
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
But hopefully with slavery, they at least provide a roof over your head and food.
Well, don't we have socialized housing and all that? Like, don't we have that?
But that's my question about this whole like universal wage nonsense thing. Like, are they going to take away all of those benefits?
Well, who knows? Who knows how that's going to work out? The whole scheme is broken. But I would, excuse me.
But that's the thing.
I would draw you to the expression: nobody is more hopelessly enslaved than he who falsely believes he's free. So it's like, okay, yeah, you have you can choose what home you live in, but the one thing you can't escape is somebody clawing away a third of your paycheck or more.
Oh yeah, but I mean that's the thing. Like, it just drives me nuts because it's like people are looking, oh, free money, awesome. Oh, but like if we're gonna still give them unemployment insurance, we're still gonna give out welfare, we're still gonna give out this, that, and everything else. Where is this other money gonna come from? Are they gonna start taxing everybody more? And if they're gonna tax me $1,000 to give me $900 back, why don't you just take $100 from me? And if our current programs are not working right, why don't they tweak our current programs rather than just trying to layer something on top of that?
You're pleading for sanity in an insane system.
This 100% goes back to what I was saying earlier, that you can't have the system set up in such a way. I forgot my point.
That's because we're just so fucking angry. Like, it's just like,
dude, like you're asking for sanity and rationality in a system that's fundamentally insane.
Yeah, like I don't get. I don't know. Maybe it's because I am rational and relatively sane that I don't get how this could fucking work.
Oh, I
Especially if
remember.
they don't cancel all those other programs. Like if they're just like, all right, we're gonna cancel everything else and just give everyone $900 a month, then at least it would start making more sense to me.
No, the thing that I said earlier. This is the same thing. It's the 51% of the population voting for how to distribute the product of the labor of the other 49%.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, they're not even voting for that. They're voting for free fucking money. That's the
No,
problem.
but
Like
that's the
nobody
thing.
reads the small print these days.
It's not free money. You're taking the money of the productive part of society.
You,
Violently, I
yeah,
might add.
you know
Well,
that. I know
yes.
that. But that's not how they bill it. They bill it as free money, and idiots vote on it, and then it becomes a thing, and they don't realize that it's their own tax dollars being given back to them.
It's
Yeah,
not their own
but
tax dollars. It's my tax dollars. That's the
Well,
the
yeah.
issue.
Well, if you're on the bottom end of the scale, yeah, it's someone else's tax dollars. But even if you're in like the middle or sort of that break-even point on the scale, it's your money getting given back to you. Just like at this time of year when you get money back from doing your taxes, that's your money that you overpaid, people.
I don't know how many times we have to drink. People said tax a lot just now.
Yeah.
you said overpaid like it was a mistake you made. It was a mistake the government made.
Well, exactly, right?
And
You give them money to borrow so that they can invest it and make money
yeah,
off of that, and they
they
don't give it back to you at interest. They
exactly.
give it back to you on par.
You gave the government an interest-free loan for the whole year, and in the meantime, you've lost 2% on that money due to inflation,
Yeah.
and they've made whatever they've made with it.
Well, yeah, you've even lost more than that because the bank could have been giving you, even if the bank is a shitty fucking bank,
Yeah, the
they'll still
opportunity
give you at
cost,
least
how you
minimal
could have
interest.
invested that money, right?
Yeah, so if you're losing 2% there on inflation, you're probably losing at least 4 to 6%
Yeah.
overall, which I mean isn't a whole lot of money, but that's still up on the positive. Like
Yeah.
that's money, your money in your pocket. I
Yeah.
could keep it in my mattress and I'd still be better off than giving it to them.
Yeah. So I don't know when you pay taxes, supposedly there's an implied social contract which I don't buy because a contract implies consent, and I do not consent to pretty much everything the government spends its money on. Um, it when it comes back to you, it's passed through the layers of bureaucracy, it all costs money. So by the time it gets back to you, it might be 50, 60% of what you originally inputted into the system. Like people need to realize that
Yeah.
there are like millions of people that work for the government in this country, and they do not create value. These people are parasites, and not to say that the individuals are, but their jobs, their roles in society are parasitic in nature in that they feed off of the productive enterprise that supports it all.
Well, yeah, because
Okay, so that's a good segue. What are our proposed solutions to fixing that? Since we've talked about some other people's ideas, what would we do? How would you address that problem?
Ooh, you want to ask me that question? You got
Oh,
time?
I got a thing in the show notes. I got an idea. So
Gavin, why don't you take the lead?
yeah, I mean, if they get rid of just all that bureaucratic bullshit, like, I mean, if you start getting a program to, take people's money just to give it back to them, like that's the stupidest thing ever because you're gonna have to pay all those people to administer that program, like you're saying, and that just wastes money because you have to pay them for all their time and effort just to give me my fucking money back. Like that right there is a huge waste of time, resources, money, everything. Like, get rid of them. Make government smaller. There's fewer people to pay. That right there is going to save some money. Stop paying people to do stupid shit. Like stop and not that we don't need to invest in science and research and all of that, but like stop putting it into research on stupid projects. If people want to invest in whatever messed up unimportant thing they can, then that's free to them put their own money into that.
why does sand make the noise that sand makes when it runs down a hill?
Exactly. you know, or Tyler's favorite, the mating habits of gay squirrels.
Yep.
Like,
That is a topic that is worth studying. That is worth
well, but
our
then
combined
you
national
can
effort.
feel free to donate your hard-earned money to that. While I donate mine to why does sand, make weird humming noises when it runs downhill. And eventually those things will get solved and we can put our money towards something else, like sending people to school for feminist interpretive dance. But, if we stop spending money on stupid things like that and spending it on the important things, that would be fantastic and a step in the right direction.
I want to interject and say that I think we hate on feminist interpretive dance a lot on this show, and I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with it as long as it's not my money going towards it. I mean, if somebody wants to do a feminist interpretive dance in front of me to entertain me, I may find it entertaining. But that doesn't mean that I want to fund it financially.
I mean, that's the way I would handle it personally. You want to fix the budget. You start playing with the numbers, you're really just putting band-aids on a sucking chest wound. It's not going to change anything. In order to really fix the issues, you got to go to the root cause, and you got to redefine what is and is not a legitimate role for government. In my opinion, if government has to exist, it's to protect life, liberty, and property. So to protect the fundamental rights of the individual, of the citizen, and as an extension of that, to preserve national integrity and borders. So you got national defense thrown in there too. Preserving life, liberty, and property, by extension, would include some sort of justice system, some sort of code. But I kind of feel like pretty much it'd be a very basic code as far as I'm concerned. If you violate one of those three things, that's an offense.
Yeah. Are you fucking with someone else's shit? Yes.
Exactly.
Okay, then you should be penalized for that. No, you're only hurting yourself. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, like the current system we're dealing with, something can be illegal for two reasons. It can be illegal because it's illegal, or it can be illegal because it's like fundamentally morally wrong. For example, it might be illegal to throw your laptop out in your backyard and bury it 2 feet underground because you don't like it anymore and it's out of date. And there are all sorts of regulations for disposals of plastics and batteries and stuff. That's a regulation. Somebody just decided that was not okay. Killing somebody or taking their stuff is objectively wrong. Right?
Well, and I think we also need to differentiate between like what is actually bad and what is just like a moral judgment, right?
Right, and that's the point I was just going to make, is you have a lot of people with a lot of different stances on morality. So we have certain religions where they espouse a specific value, so that maybe adultery in their view is, a thing that's punishable by death. And we have other religions where they don't consider it adultery when you have sister wives.
Yeah, and I was gonna kind of go somewhere with that, and that there seem to only be two universal things that are wrong: murder and lying to people seem to be the only things that are frowned upon universally, and even then, sometimes that's open to interpretation. Pretty much everything is wide open to just a simple matter of perspective. For example, lying to people, that in the Muslim faith there is a concept of deceiving non-believers as long as it suits your purposes, and that's okay. And that's like a religious perspective, and it is what it is, right? And religion really skews it. Religion defies logic constantly. And I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but they all do it. I'm not gonna pick on Muslims just because I mentioned them, but they all do it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's a belief in some sort of supernatural parent figure that spanks you from above when you've been bad. Like, they're all equally as crazy as anything else. Like, it's.
Yeah. So that's the difficult thing. There are basically the laws that are on the books now generally fall into one of two categories. It's either to prohibit something that is morally and ethically wrong, or to prohibit something that's just illegal because it's illegal. It's been declared to be illegal. So you need to define what the legitimate roles of government are. I personally would have a very narrow definition of that, and I would slash everything on the budget that doesn't fall into those categories, quite simply. And I would adopt, as far as the tax system goes, I haven't really given that serious thought, just because it's like It's a pipe dream. It's really a pipe dream. I don't think we're going to get there until the whole thing collapses in on itself, until we have like some sort of catastrophic debt crisis where interest payments on the debt are 50% of the government budget. I don't think anything's going to change because I don't think you're going to get a majority of people to voluntarily give up a system where they're able to vote themselves wealth from other portions of the population. The only way that's going to end is when the well runs dry, in my opinion.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I think when that happens, money's just not going to matter anymore.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
And the only thing to invest
Currency
in,
of the day will be 5.56 ammo.
Damn right. I've been investing heavily.
that'll be a great thing to invest in.
Okay, so now that Tyler's totally destroyed this, I'm going to talk about my pipe dream because I actually have a solution to this whole fucking mess. Bear with me because it's like a 5-point fucking plan.
Lay
Do
it
you have a
down.
PowerPoint presentation?
I might have a PowerPoint. It's
Sweet.
actually printed off because I expect to implement this after the grid goes down.
Ah,
So the
All
the first point would be to eliminate personal income tax.
I'm with you
Stop.
so far.
So no flat taxes, no tax credits, none of that shit. The government does not get the fruits of my labor directly. There's another thing coming up, but no more contributions through my payroll, no more end of April having to submit my tax. And personal income tax is eliminated as a system of income for the government. And I have a reason for this, which is my next point. We redefine the goods and services tax. So the only system of government revenue is through GST. And the reason for this is it eliminates all of the problems that we have with illegal entry into the country and paying people under the table. It eliminates all the issues that have with various forms of well-paid individuals getting remunerated, but not getting remunerated with cash money. So instead of getting like stock options or a card that's not taxed through your payroll system, we just put everything through as a GST and we make it whatever number that is that I have not worked out because I don't know how high the GST has to be. I imagine it's going to be very high if we were to stay in line with the current budget, which...
If we do that, though, can we just make that the price tag on stuff?
Oh, yeah, you do it like
I
a
don't want
VAT.
to go to the store and be like, shit, I have to pay 114% tax. Can you just put that as the sticker price? So
Well, and that's what I'm saying. You just make that the price of stuff. So
Yeah.
if you have to charge, and I don't think it'd be 100%, it'd be like 30 or 40% under the current system. But the current budget is broken. We know that. And I like Tyler's point about how we would reduce all of the pieces about government that don't make any sense. So we have to define like what the government is spending its money on, which we'll get to in my little plan. But we adjust the goods and services tax so that's the form of revenue that the government has to play with. And the way that we do that is we enforce legitimate businesses operating, and we get rid of all of the gray and black market trade. Everybody just operates above board because there's no longer a disincentive to do things under the table. There's no more like cash jobs on the side because the businesses are the only things that have to report revenue in this model, right? So there's no longer a disincentive for the individual to hide their earnings through some other means, right? We don't have to deal with payroll taxes or other shenanigans. And then we go into what Tyler said about I called it reducing the fraud, waste, and abuse in government. But yeah, Tyler's
That's a little
point
too on the
stands.
nose.
It's the same idea. And you know, one thing that I failed to articulate when I brought up the issue of laws being either making something illegal when it was morally or ethically wrong, and then when it was just illegal for the sake of being illegal, is that every law requires government to enforce it. So when they created, something we talk about on this podcast all the time, the Firearms Act, that requires an extensive government bureaucracy and apparatus, an expansion of government to enforce it, and by extension, more taxation.
Well,
So
at what positive benefit to society, though? That's
exactly.
the thing. Like,
Just a
the
net
Firearms Act, the CFO, all of the police enforcement, the RCMP Canadian Firearms Program does very little, if anything, to
the
prevent
expression
gun.
you're looking for is sweet fuck all.
You mean they don't come by your house every day to make sure that all of your rivets are still in place?
Well, that's what I mean. Like they're relying predominantly, they're predominantly relying on law-abiding Canadians to continue to be law-abiding.
Yeah.
So why not just eliminate that system and put it onto those generally morally sound arguments like don't murder people. There shouldn't be a separate clause for don't murder people with guns.
Well, you gotta be specific, though.
Don't steal from people. There doesn't need to be a clause like don't hold up a bank with a gun. There should just be like don't steal shit.
It kind of ties into what you were saying before about deterrence, where like if a guy is going to go out and kill somebody, is he going to care about the extra 2 or 3 years they might tack on his 21-year sentence for having no rivet in his magazine?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Does that matter? Does it matter at that point? No, it doesn't.
Well, and that's what I mean. Like the whole fraud, waste, and abuse of the government needs to be significantly reduced because most of those systems don't have an appreciable benefit to society, like the Firearms Act or the Liquor Licensing Act.
Just as an example, or that exactly. Like there's so many. We could have a whole volume. We could do a whole separate podcast where that's all we talk about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at, like we were talking about religion and morality, and they kind of set the baseline for the original set of rules, and, I guess in North America, Christianity is the big one, and you've got, like, the 10 Commandments, right? Sure. You could probably pare those down to about, like, 3, maybe 4 that, like, really matter, and that's probably about all you would need to worry about. Like, I mean, you can get rid of, like, the adultery and, like, coveting your neighbor's ass and all of that nonsense, because, like, that's more of a moral judgment.
Well, and that's contractual between individuals, right?
Like, thou shalt not murder and shouldn't steal and stuff like that. Those should be in there because those, affect other people. But you really don't need that many laws in order to make society run as it should. It's all these stupid, don't murder people. But don't murder people with guns, knives, baseball bats, whatever you could get your hands on. You don't need all that other nonsense when don't
God
murder people should be enough.
Murder is a different color than you. That makes it, add another 5 years to the sentence for that.
Yeah.
It's just like, where does it end?
Well, exactly, right?
That's what I mean. There should be absolutely no need to categorize and further separate the, like obviously morally objectionable acts like murder or theft.
Well, not even that. Like, I mean, there was I guess a couple of people that got caught with some AKs or whatever in Toronto not too long ago, which is prohibited, and they weren't even people that had gun licenses or anything like that, and were, I believe, also involved in gang activity. So they're kind of people.
How did they get a prohibited gun in Canada without a prohibited license? That just.
But not even that. It's when they charge them. They had this list of ridiculous charges, and it's like, I'm glad that people that were criminals got caught, and there's a illegal gun off the streets. I'm happy for that, but they charged them with like, oh, you have a prohibited firearm with ammunition. You had prohibited ammunition, even though the ammunition they had was just regular 7.62 by 39. And like they had all these other like charges that were like, this is the same charge as like the 3 charges before this. So this doesn't, to me, this doesn't make any sense, like looking at it logically. But I guess they just throw everything they can at them because just in case one doesn't stick, then all the other ones will.
I believe the way they would do it is unlicensed possession of a firearm for each gun, and then they would do unlawful storage of a firearm for each gun.
It was just so many ridiculous charges, and it was just like...
That just speaks to how broken our justice system is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm glad they got busted because it was an illegal gun held by scumbags, but like...
Yeah.
But looking at the charges, it was like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, they've already been charged with this, like, 5 times. You just worded it differently.
Yeah.
So, carrying on with my pipe dream to fix the government, we would, and I think this is in line with what Tyler was saying, privatize most, if not all, government services, because the government is overreaching and terribly out of line with what I think that they exist for, because... if it's not national defense, protection of person or property, or settling civil disputes, I don't think it belongs in the government's hands. Why is the government in charge of distributing alcohol in Ontario? Why are they in charge of healthcare at all in this country? Like, why are those things not private sector? Because the private sector, driven by competition, will be far better at it than any public sector service provided by government.
Yeah, but we need to be careful though, because a lot of this stuff that we've privatized, using the rabbit ears here, over the years, especially in healthcare, has been privatized, but hasn't really. The government's kind of awarded one company the contract, and it goes through them, and
Yes.
they're technically considered an NPO, and the way they get around that is the people at the top of the company don't actually get paid a salary, they get paid a percentage. So whatever profits the company makes get paid out to the top employees, so technically they don't ever generate a profit, so they're considered an MPO, and then they don't pay all these taxes and this and that and everything else.
Now, a lot of people...
This all goes back to my original plan, though, because we're eliminating personal income taxes and we're making everything a business tax. There is no MPO. You're a business or you're not.
Yeah.
I do like that idea, and I think in the U.S. Republican presidential race, Mike Huckabee didn't get the love that he deserved for advocating that very same plan, where he said, let's get away from the income tax and let's move to a consumption tax. And
that's because he doesn't have fabulous hair.
That's because he doesn't have fabulous hair, yeah. But because then that way you, as an individual, actually have a say in how much tax you pay. You can work your ass off and then adjust your lifestyle so you consume as little as possible to save money.
Yep.
So there's more.
You could trade and barter. You could do all kinds of stuff.
There's all of those other things that get out of the system.
Exactly.
And my proposal. Well, I realized that it would not work in socialist Canada because we have too many people that are dependent on state-sponsored welfare and our socialized medicine system, that pushing the big red button to make it happen tomorrow is a terrible idea, and I fully understand that. And if somebody came up to me and said, you could implement your plan by pushing this button, I wouldn't do it because it's a bad idea and people will get hurt. But if there was a button that said you could implement this over the next, generation or 2 generations or 3 generations, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to push that button. I'll push that button every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because I realize that pushing it and instantaneously changing the dynamic of our country is not a good idea for our country. But if you could let me make that a gradual change over the course of decades that affected generations, so that we eliminated things like generational welfare, yeah, I'm all for that. Absolutely.
But then you're making choices for your great-grandchildren, Andrew, and that is not right.
Here's what I'd throw in there, is that if it doesn't happen slowly, it will happen abruptly.
It will, absolutely.
Because at some point, exactly, if things continue on the path that they're on now, it will just end abruptly. We'll just reach a point where we can't borrow any more money, where the government is totally insolvent, and it will end right then and there, and a lot of people who are dependent on the system will just flat out die. I mean, I know it might not be in our generation. I don't know. But it's going to happen. It's a mathematical certainty that it's going to happen. Now, the one thing I just wanted to throw in there, Gavin, because you mentioned the nonprofit organizations, and this is something that a lot of people will bring up to criticize the idea of privatizing traditionally, air quotes, traditionally government functions. And they'll criticize it as being corrupt. And they'll criticize that as an example of capitalism failing, or free market enterprise failing. But I need to stress the point that is not free market enterprise.
No, it's not. When you only award one company the ability to do it,
that is a government-sanctioned monopoly. And when you have monopolies, you have basically everything the government does is a monopoly, right? Yeah. They have no competition. They have free and open access to the whole market. There's no incentive to have attractive pricing. There's no incentive to have efficient means of delivering a product or service. That's exactly what happens when you have a government-sanctioned monopoly. And it's worse when it's a government-sanctioned monopoly versus an actual market monopoly, where the market monopoly was achieved by being competitive and all that. Government-sanctioned monopolies are backed up by the force of a gun.
Well, their inefficiencies create jobs, which looks good, right? So people get happy.
The government does not create jobs, even if you work for the government. That is not how that works.
This plays back to the economic illiteracy of people that we're talking about, and how outrageous it is that I'm expected to share a system of government with those people.
Yeah.
All right. My last point in my 5-point plan on how to fix our economy, how to fix our budget. We restructure how we pay all federal actually, for that matter, all government employees. And the system that we use to pay them, starting with the MPs are no longer allowed to vote themselves raises like they just did. Because, don't worry about our increased inflation. Don't worry about the fact that our unemployment rate just went up. Don't worry about all those. Yeah, you all just go ahead and give yourself like a 10% raise. It's fine. We don't mind paying that as Canadian taxpayers, right?
Yeah, especially when you've just spent all of our money plus $30 billion.
Yeah, plus $30 billion. So my solution to that program, and I realize that this may be flawed, and I'm sure Tyler will point out to me in detail in a moment how that is. We index all government salaries against what they pay the Canadian Forces salaries. And I'm sure one of two things will happen. Either all of the yahoos that are in government that are there because it's a cushy job that pays well will get out and go private sector where it pays better, or all of a sudden our soldiers are going to make a boatload more cash.
That's really the only one of two things is going to happen.
Did I get that? I got that pretty well. Yeah.
It's one of two outcomes. They're either going to make it extraordinarily corrupt, and the soldiers are going to have to be in on the racket, or they're going to get out. But somebody else is going to move in to fill the void. And I've heard arguments one way or the other about how government employees, especially employees of influence, should be compensated. Some people will advocate that they should just be paid market wages, which is fair, and some people be defenders of the current system where they're paid well above market wages because they feel like it protects against corruption. And while it might protect against corruption, it doesn't help us when it comes to inefficiencies. And the costs of inefficiencies are just as bad as the corruption costs, so we're really no farther ahead. I think ultimately, Andrew, I really like the plan of getting away from the income tax, because if a tax on cigarettes and alcohol is supposed to deter excessive smoking and drinking, then a tax on labor does what?
It deters people's labor. Exactly.
Exactly. It's a disincentive from working.
And I'm not saying that. So my theory with the whole taxation process, drink,
which is theft.
Taxation is theft. Drink. If you're going to tax something, drink, it shouldn't be the income. It should be what you spend it on. And I'm not talking about if it's a vice. And I'm being very careful about throwing the T word in because this is going to get really drinky really quickly. If there's a vice tax, drink, or a gas tax or whatever, it doesn't disincentive you from using those products, because if it did, people wouldn't smoke. People wouldn't buy gas for their cars, right? Like,
exactly.
Okay.
Get rid of all. What I'm saying when I say like restructure the GST, I mean like set the GST at a rate where the income allows us a reasonable budget to fund a reasonably small government. So if that's 20, 40, 100% tax on stuff, not like 12.7% surcharge for a road fee and 3.3% whatever the other fee is for gas. Because you pay like 20 cents for gas just in taxes.
You're just talking like 37% on everything and everything.
Exactly. And cigarettes, there's no vice tax for tobacco or for booze.
Regular goods and service tax.
It's just a GST. That's right. So regardless of the product or service that you sell, if you sell it for $100, you add whatever it is, $40 on top of that, and you just as a business, you just hand the $40 over to the government every quarter, every year, however often you do your submission, right?
Yeah.
Like, let's break down the current tax plan. You're going to pay pretty much between 25 and 45% on your income in Canada. Okay, so right off the bat, you're losing a quarter to basically half your money. First of all, the value you create is less than what you receive. Otherwise, your employer has a bad business model. So you receive less than you actually produce. And then of what you receive, almost half can be taxed potentially. Now let's say you go out and buy a product. I've got a muzzle brake on AR-15 upper receiver behind me. It's made in Canada, Delask Arms, Vancouver. When you buy that product for $69.99 or $74.99, that price is taxed at 13%. for the existing Ontario HST. And built into that price is Delascarm's income tax, the property tax on their facility, the tax built into the fuel that goes into their operations, the tax built into the electricity that goes into their operations, the tax built into the fuel to deliver raw materials to their facility, the income tax of the driver of the truck that delivers materials to that facility, all of the layers of taxation that are in every step of the means of production for a given commercial product is built into the end price that the consumer pays. It goes back to what I said earlier in the podcast, where if you raise the minimum wage, the employer doesn't pay it, the customer does. The same thing. Every tax in society is paid by the end consumer. You're paying well over 50, 60% taxes. Believe me, well beyond 60% taxes. And you have to consider the fact that in order to spend $70, $80 on a muzzle brake, you have to earn $120.
Yeah.
So people really lose sight of that. It's really easy to lose sight of that when all of this stuff is hitting you from, it's 1,000 different pinpricks, you know. But you got to take a step back, look at the bigger picture. You're getting screwed.
Oh yeah, I mean we all work the first 3 to 4 months of the year for free, basically. Like.
Yeah.
All right. So back off that tangent into what I was saying about the indexing the government. No, it's a good tangent. I agree with that. I just
sorry.
No, it's a good tangent.
You get all fired up about taxes. Drink.
I'm still not getting my taxation as theft tattoo covered up.
Drink. If the government is not like super duper turbo corrupt, and we can index the salaries of government employees off of the pay scale that we use for the Canadian Forces, even if we say the Prime Minister is equivalent of the highest ranking general in the Army, like the entire Canadian Forces, I say Army, but I mean the whole CAF, that makes his salary $228,000, which sounds like a lot, right? Like that's a pretty good salary. Until you realize that his actual salary is like closer to $335 right now. Right? And that's the Prime Minister.
Plus, you know, he's got free room and board. You know, you got to factor all this other stuff in. The guy's making $500,000 a year easy if you put him on the free market.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, plus his pension for life and everything else. And I'm not saying adjusting all of that. I'm just saying the base salary stuff. Index it against what they pay the Army, what they pay the Canadian Forces. It doesn't have to be specifically somebody that wears the green outfits. It could be the blue ones or the whatever color of the day the Navy is wearing.
Don't we all just wear CADPAT now?
Kind of, sort of, not exactly. Different color T-shirts.
Most people, but not everyone.
Different color T-shirts. So yeah, just index. So if the PM is the highest ranking officer, general officer in the military, and he makes $228,000 a year, well, like what's an MP? Like the equivalent of a captain? So they make like $120,000 a year. $120,000 a year is still pretty good. Yeah. But an MP makes $170,000 a year right now. Where can you go as a private sector employee and make $170,000 a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the ridiculous thing about the PM too is like Tyler was saying, like he gets, you know, free room and board and everything, and not just him, his family, whoever lives under that roof. And then if he decides to, say, build a pool, who pays for that? We do. And then who pays for the upkeep on that pool? We do. If you want to get, and you know, people will say we're ripping on the Liberals because that was Trudeau's father that had the pool installed. I mean, even Harper had his piano tuned under our fucking dime. If he's making that much fucking money, he can tune his own goddamn piano.
I mean, part of this, I mean, like the nationalist in me, I mean, part of this I'm okay with. Like, I don't mind having a taxpayer-funded address for our head of state.
No,
I mind when they want to do like,
job, right?
Well, it's not even perks to the job. I mean, like, we should be well respected on the world stage, and I'm not opposed to having like a state head of house kind of a a primary residence for our head of the government. That doesn't bother me.
But they shouldn't just be able to decide I'm building a pool.
Right. That's the part that I take issue. If you want to build a pool out of your $228,000.
Yeah, you have the money to do it. If you want to tune your piano out of your funds, like
exactly. And that's the part that
not like it was given to him by like the Queen of England or something like that, and now it's considered Canada's property. It was his own personal item. He can tune it his own fucking self, like.
Well, and that's the thing. Like the salaries that we're paying, and it's not just exclusively like the model that I'm proposing is not just the Prime Minister or just MPs.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely freaking everybody in government service. Because if you're going to be in government service, you're in government service. And I hate to break it to people that work for the federal government, but the military is government service. So if you're working in a building in Ottawa administering, I don't know, feminist interpretive dance applications, you don't make more than a sergeant in the Army does. Sorry, you're not worth it.
What about the people working the counter at the MTO?
Privates. They make as much as privates.
I would have the MTO abolished if I had my way.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, this is the waste, fraud, and abuse part that I talked about. The MTO is a joke. What value does the MTO provide to the average citizen?
Well, I can get my health card photo taken there.
No. You can. I can take your health card photo. You have a camera. You can take your own health card photo. Like what value does the MTO provide? You are not a
government-approved camera person.
But what
it's
value?
Not like they take your blood test there, like it's no more secure than you doing it yourself.
It is absolutely not.
Yeah.
Which is the ridiculous thing because we take our own gun license photos.
I took my own this year. I didn't go to a guarantor. I didn't get a guy that does passport. I did it myself in the hallway. It was great.
I used like a 6-year-old photo of me because I look pretty much the same as I did when I was 21.
My beard got bigger.
Yeah, but that could happen anyways. Like,
well, Viagra, I mean. No, wait, that's different.
Well, you sent them a photo of that?
You should see my firearms license.
You are a dick.
I don't know how to address the issue of public employee compensation. What I would say is if you're in the public service, let's say, for example, you're in the federal public service, I don't think that you should get the ability to vote in federal elections. And if you're in the provincial public service, not in the provincial elections. And that way we avoid the situation that we have in Ontario where people consistently vote for the same gang of crooks, thieves, rapists, and all the corruption because they're voting to protect their jobs. I'd like to see that avoided.
I support that. I'm 100% on board.
It's a massive conflict of interest.
Yeah, if you work for the government, you shouldn't get to vote for who the government is.
Yeah, for at least that level of government.
Well, yeah. I mean, being a member of government should be its own reward, right?
Yeah. Public service is service, right?
Public service should be service, which is why, again, I tie this all back to how they compensate Canadian Armed Forces members. Because if you want to work for the government, that's how you work for the government. If you want to sit in the ivory tower in Ottawa, I'm sorry, you're not worth more to the country than some sergeant that spent 10 years in service that knows how to do whatever his job is as he's an infantry sergeant. His job is to have his platoon close with and destroy with the enemy regardless of conditions or terrain.
Yeah,
if you work in
shot off in Kosovo or everywhere else.
Yeah. If you work in Ottawa and you rubber stamp health card renewals, you're not worth as much to the country as that guy.
Well, I'm pretty sure that's one of those things that we could automate.
Well, it is, but that's a whole other... I could automate a lot of things.
Yeah. And the other thing I would say is I'm not really big on bans, I'm not big on bans, but so I wouldn't say that we should ban public sector unions, but what I would say is that I would make it all right to work. Like, you shouldn't be forced to join a union.
No, absolutely. Forcing people to join a union defeats the purpose of why unions exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, in reality, for the most part, in North America, unions are outdated.
That's true. I mean, the majority of the reasons unions were originally formed, now all those things are codified in law. Now, I don't know how much of that would survive my shakeup, because I think ultimately that People have the right to unionize if they don't like the
Yeah.
employment terms that the employer is offering. I mean, I have no problem with that. It's all voluntary, right? Strictly
Oh yeah.
voluntary. So, but when it comes
But
specifically to the private sector, like the objective situation that we're dealing with is that people are overcompensated and they don't create value. Like
Right.
these people are a bane to our existence, and we have no, as taxpayers, we have no ability whatsoever, no meaningful ability anyway, to change anything. Right? Everybody keeps voting every 4 years, every 5 years. We vote for change, and we
well,
get
this time we voted for real
nothing.
change.
We voted for sunny ways, and it was pretty sunny this weekend. So is Trudeau going to take credit for that?
And
I don't
he
know.
might as well.
He's busy explaining quantum computing. Check the CBC.
Incorrectly.
Yeah, well, it's binary. It's either a 1 or a 0.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey,
come
as
on,
long
guys.
as
It's
he's
just math.
confident in his wrong answer, that's what matters. That's that drama school teacher credibility showing through. And like, if you don't know, just be confident.
Like you, as an individual, you have no real meaningful ability to even impact how your own municipality is run or how your own school district is run. And you keep going up the tiers of government, you have even less of an ability. You know, the county level, the regional municipality, up to the province, the federal government. Like you, ultimately, as an individual, motivated as you are insignificant. And at the same time, the money that is taken from you is obviously very valuable to you as an individual. And there's nothing, you have no control. That money is gone. Like a lot of people, see, this is the thing that I take issue with. A lot of people will say, oh, to a public employee, my taxes pay your salary. No, they don't. They do not. It's not your money. It ceased to be your money when it was taken from you. It is not your money. These people don't work for you. They work for the government. Okay? And the government is a totally separate entity that's totally detached from your will and your desire. I think it's very important to lay that point home.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's go into rapid fire. We'll start closing out the show. There is no rapid fire feedback this week. If you want to get in touch with the show, you can do that at facebook.com/Canadian Patriot Podcast or by visiting CanadianPatriotPodcast.com/feedback. I love your hate mail, so send it to me at feedback@CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Be sure to include details about how the show offended you and why I need to use trigger warnings because you think the internet is part of your safe space.
So can we get a 1-800 number?
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Or can we just piggyback off of the government's 1-800
I was just going to say the federal liberals have created a 1-800 number that if you feel that they need a trigger warning, you can call them.
Yeah. I'm actually gonna. I haven't had a chance yet, but I am actually gonna call that number, and I want to ask them some questions about that stuff. Like, is it volunteer? Is it paid? Like, what kind of qualifications do they have? Like, are these just like
how many times can you call?
That are like, well, yeah, like, can't like are they actual like people with some sort of medical degree of sorts that are capable of dealing with the trauma that I have, or are they just like dickheads like us that are going to give shitty advice, right? Like,
we give fantastic advice.
Like, I want to know, because if we're going to be paying for this out of our tax dollars, I want to make sure that the people calling are getting the care that they deserve.
As soon as you answer the phone, you're like, hello, how can I help you? Gavin speaking, taxation is theft.
Ring.
Pretty much, because I could totally volunteer and do that out of the goodness of my heart.
We'll figure out how to tax that too sooner or later.
Where's the best place for people to stay in touch with you, Gavin?
The best place you can find me on the Instagrams at urbex_GTA, or if you are friends with any of these miscreants on the Facebooks, you can search me through them. But I'll make you work for it.
You're one of 2 Gavins on my friends list, so you shouldn't be too hard to find.
No.
All right, Tyler, what about you? Where's the best place for people to stay in touch with you?
Best place to find me, best place to reach me is my podcast Facebook page, facebook.com/LibertyDeathPodcast, or the Instagram @LibertyPodcast. Also on Twitter occasionally, although I really do hate Twitter. And
You're not a twatter.
my personal account on Facebook is usually not too hard to find. If we have friends in common, you wouldn't have any trouble finding me.
Yeah, chances are we're already friends if you like guns.
Pretty much.
Yeah. As always, my name is Andrew. You can find all my work on everydaytactical.com. I'm on Instagram. Look for all the pictures of guns, dogs, and beer at EDTactical. I also hate Twitter, but hey, I've got one at EDTactical. I don't check that crap. If you want to send me hate mail, feedback at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. Just remember, your tears fuel me.
He uses them to jack off.
Oh, God.
You can check out the show, CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. That's where you find all of our show notes, everything about the show. That's how you get in touch with us. It's also links to all of the cool stuff that we're involved in. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CanadianPatriotPodcast. Like I said, send your feedback or your hate mail to feedback at CanadianPatriotPodcast.com. I'd like to remind all of our listeners that you are the true north, strong and free.